Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love, money, mine. Love, money, mine. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna and welcome to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Darryl Webster. Darryl is a 29-year veteran clinical social worker at high poverty schools in the District of Columbia. He's also an award-winning social worker that includes all sorts of different awards that we're going to cover in the interview. He also appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and he's married to his high school sweetheart and they have 3 children. Awesome guy, can't wait for you to listen to this interview. Hi Darryl, thanks ever so much for giving me the time to make the show and give me that opportunity to interview you. Thanks to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna.
So it's great to have you. I know that you're on the other side of the world, from me anyway. So it's early morning for you. And, being a clinical social worker, a speaker, author, as well as we'll be discussing in a moment, I'd really love you to kind of open up and sort of share your story with all the listeners about how you got to be how you got to be writing this book in the first place. So share with us how it all came about.
Yeah, I've been doing social work for 30 years now. I work primarily in the public school system, working with kids with trauma and families, just doing some wonderful work, transforming lives. And I came into social work, I tell people, it wasn't a career that I sought. Really, the universe put me into social work. I was going through a very difficult time back in my 20s when I graduated from college, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. A lot of terrible things happened. My grandparents who raised me died 2 months apart. My girlfriend left me for another guy. My uncle died. My high school coach died. I was really in a terrible place. And I found a job, a low-paying job, working in a group home for kids with trauma histories. And some people thought it was a dead-end job. But during that job, a woman came from Catholic University of America and brought tutors to our students. And I said, ma'am, one day, I was a young guy back then. I said, I want to go to graduate school, but I don't know what to do. And she was just listening to me. And a few weeks later, she called me and she said, Mr. Webster, there's a fellowship for social workers at Catholic University. And I was so young and unaware. I said, well, what do social workers do? She said, doing exactly what you're doing now. From what I can tell, you're great at helping people. You would be a great social worker. Long story short, I went to the university. I applied. I only had a C average in undergraduate school, but they admitted me. And fortunately, I had just went on the Oprah Winfrey Show during that time. I was doing a lot of good work during that time and got to go on Oprah. So I put a picture of me and Oprah in my admissions packet. And I got into graduate school, and that's how I became a social worker. So I say sometimes the universe have better plans for you than you have for yourself. And so I've been doing that work ever since for the last 30 years. And I love helping people. And so that's why I wrote my new book. I thought I was going crazy, overcoming stress, anxiety, and depression, because mental health is such a big issue right now all over the world. People have so many fears and anxieties. And I went through that in my 20s and I overcame it. And I haven't had a relapse since. And I want to really transform and help people's lives and help them get out of feeling anxious and depressed. And so I'm just so excited to be on your show, and I don't know what to say. So I'll keep going on and on, but feel free to ask me more questions.
Yeah, no, I totally can relate to that, because I think before we recorded, I was explaining about the 3 pillars that I have. And the reason I talk about these 3 pillars is because these are the 3 things that have helped me get equilibrium in my life. Because I was a domestic violence survivor who had turned my life around, and so can relate to some of the things that you touched on there. Yeah. And I feel that when basically, freedom in love, which for me is self-care, self-love, and also the love that we give out to other people in the world. And touching on what you said about helping other people, because I think I know I help a lot of people, and it makes me feel really good when you help other people. And actually, sometimes now, if you have like a bit of an off day, when you help other people, it kind of lifts you up, doesn't it? Like, I don't know, just it's so nourishing helping other people.
Yeah.
And then freedom in money, because when I had financial pressures, it wasn't great. So it's, to have, have freedom financially, just enables you to be able to do, have more flexibility and be able to, live a lifestyle that you want. And then freedom in mind. I mean, mind is huge, isn't it, really? I talk a lot about Fred in the head, because Fred in the head plays games with us at times, but freedom in mind sort of encompasses the whole thing for me, that if you can, it's not about being super positive every single day, but it's just about being able to deal with life's challenges. We don't know what's going to come and hit us in the future, do we? But it's being able to kind of accept them, digest them, and kind of turn them into something positive or a meaning, really. So those are kind of like the three things that have helped me get equilibrium in my life. And it sounds like everything that you've been doing in your work life, starting from, your journey, you could probably relate to a lot of those, really.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, when I hear you talk about that feeling of satisfaction, of giving in terms of altruism, I've experienced that in my life for the last 30 years doing this type of work. I've learned in my research is that when we give, there's a chemical in our brain called oxytocin. It's the feel-good hormone, and dopamine. Those chemicals really they flourish, and they become more activated in our brains when we're giving. And so there is a chemical reaction when we are selfless in that way. And I love to give. My grandfather, who was poor financially, he always was going out of his way to help people. And I didn't know why, but he was a very spiritual person. And I think he was connected to that higher sense of belonging and giving. And although he didn't have a lot of money, he was always happy. And I didn't understand that. But it just shows you there's something special about us as human beings, that when we can give of ourselves, because we're social creatures, we're put on this planet to be together, to be in one in harmony. And when we're living in that way, it is truly the authentic self that we all need to kind of manifest in our lives.
Well, it's like when there's a big disaster or something, there's an explosion or a bomb or something like that. The humans just all automatically help each other, don't they?
Yes. And here, when September the 11th happened, I will never forget it. It's just etched in my mind forever. But I remember in the States, we came together as a country like never before. There was no division amongst politics or races. We became one unified country where everyone was looking out for one another and really trying to help heal and console the nation collectively. And so it just shows that there's a spirit that we all have, that we want to support each other, especially during our very times of seriousness and dire consequences that we face sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you touched on, that, this last, I keep forgetting how long it is, but it feels like we've been in a couple of years of, I was talking because with my job, I import a lot of products and sell on Amazon and Etsy and, physical products. And I used to go and visit Hong Kong and China. And I was saying to someone the other day, yeah, I went there last year, and then I was like, oh, hold on, actually, it was 2019. We've kind of we've managed to miss a couple of years. But I think a lot of people have, I think your book especially is going to be really useful for a lot of people, because there's been a lot of uncertainty for everybody, and it's kind of been a level playing field with that. Unless you've done the work, maybe like yourself and me, who've had previous sort of trauma or things that we've dealt with, then suddenly all of this has happened, and maybe it's affected people's jobs, relationships, or just literally the fact that they've been in lockdowns, they've not been able to, deal with it. And there's been a lot of anxiety, hasn't there, and stress and worry, because of, I think, uncertainty brings that.
Yeah.
So people listening to this episode, from your, years of experience and everything that you've got in the book, with whatever they're going through right now, is there anything maybe that you can share from the book that you can give them as regards to some tips of anybody that's feeling really like they are going crazy right now?
I mean, I wrote my book, I thought I was going crazy from my own experience, having gone through anxiety. depression. I had agoraphobia, which is the fear of going out and being out amongst people. I had panic attacks. I had major depression. All these things occurred comorbidly at the same time. And I remember I literally thought I was going crazy. And those are some of the symptoms of those types of disorders. And I remember going down to the Potomac River here in Washington, D.C. area when I was in the midst of it, really thinking about taking my life. And I said, no, my son was just born. And I said, I'm not going to take my life. I want to live. I want to live to see my son growing up. So the lessons I have in my book are teaching people how to control their thoughts. Our thoughts are the most powerful influence in the universe. Our thoughts cross all time and space. Our thoughts have the ability to wake us up and make us manifest our dreams, while our thoughts have the ability to send us spiraling down into the depths of depression. So I teach people or share my story in a way where I give them principles of cognitive behavior therapy, meaning teaching them how to focus on their thought distortions, really being aware and conscious in the moment, how they're thinking, and shifting those thoughts from negative to positive. I talk about some of the things that I did when I was going through depression, mindfulness. And mindfulness is just being moment to moment awareness in the present, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, because our minds want to wander. That's what the mind does. The mind is never really in the present. It's either what happened in the past and what happened in the future. And so many people are just stuck in the past. What happened to them in the past? I mean, you mentioned your domestic violence. Clearly, you've been able to transcend that, and now you're giving back. But there are some people who have gone through domestic violence. They can't shake that. They can't get that. They can't get over that. Now, as a therapist, I'm very aware that those types of real serious traumas, whether it be domestic violence or childhood trauma, they do need some very important critical therapy for some people to be able to process that and move on. But my point is, at the essence of maintaining your mental health and moving ahead, you have to work on yourself. You have to do some self-care things, focusing on breathing. I do a lot of diaphragmatic belly breathing just to center myself. The breath is the most powerful force we have in life. So by focusing on the breath and being present, it has a way of calming your body. One simple technique, when you're really stressed and your mind is kind of bewildered, you can just go into a Zen mode by just sitting still, focusing on the breath, and that activates a part of our nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of the body. By just taking simple deep breaths for a moment, I found my blood pressure to drop tremendously and go be normal after being seriously high when I learned how to breathe. You activate the parasympathetic and you de-escalate the sympathetic, which is that fight or flight response. So that's a very simple thing I talk about in my book. So there are many stories in my book that people are reading and saying, wow, your book has really shifted my thinking about my anxiety, about my depression. Your book is going to help a lot of people because it gives me hope. And when people are hopeless, that is a very dangerous thing. And so my book has many stories from my personal experiences that give them hope, and many strategies, some very practical, that can help them shift their thinking from negative to positive and put them on the right course where they can begin to live the life of freedom that you talked about, and all of us want to live.
Because I do think a lot of it is like about also allowing yourself to like, because I had a therapist for a certain amount of time that the police referred me to, luckily, so it was all funded, which was great. And there was the biggest learning that I got from her was allowing I think because like being a single mom, like always focused on my children, I wasn't giving myself space to kind of like allow myself to I was always like trying to be strong, had to be strong. So that was building all this anxiety inside me as well, because my subconscious was working overtime. Whereas actually just allowing myself to release, burst into tears, I saw that as a real weakness. I can't cry in front of my children, you know what I mean? I had to keep going. And like you say, mindfulness, I did a lot of meditation. Mainly in the bath, actually, because that was like my routine. I did this routine because I wasn't sleeping, where I had candles, I'd have a meditation track, and I'd just be really mindful for that time, before I went to bed, you know, preparing myself, my mind to relax, really. And I think, because I think sometimes we beat ourselves up, and it's just important to be able to release things, if you know what I mean. That really, really helped me. So I'm sure your book, with all the, you know, tips and tricks and shares of stories and things, could be really, really powerful and help a lot of people. So thank you for putting that book together, because I think
no problem. I mean, the stories in my book that I share from personal experience, and we're as social beings, social creatures, we learn best from stories. It is stories that move the world. And so the stories that I tell from true life experiences of what I go through. In my first chapter, I just talk about in my 20s when I had that debilitating experience with anxiety disorders and depression. And the reason why I share that story, because when I first went through anxiety disorders and panic attacks, not understanding what I was going through, I was bewildered. And I literally thought I was going crazy. And my mother, coincidentally at the time, was a psychiatric nurse. And I remember picking her up at the airport in the throes of mental illness and telling her, Mom, I was a young guy, 20, 23. I said, I don't feel like myself. I feel out of my mind. I never felt like this before. And she came out of the airport just happy. And I'm like, what has she got to be so happy about? My mind, I'm going crazy. And she gets in the car and I said, I feel like I'm out of my mind. And she looked at me and she said, she went from being happy to like kind of concerned. She said, what's wrong with you? I said, I just don't feel like I'm in my body. And that was that disassociation that comes with when you're really stressed, your body tends to disassociate. You feel like you're not in your body. And she turned to me in the car and she said, I think you're going crazy. And it scared the heebie-jeebies out of me, because she was a psychiatric nurse. If anyone could help me, it was her. But she didn't know at the time that some of the symptoms of anxiety disorders and depression comorbid causes those types of symptoms. But we've since learned that. But I just wanted to share that story because over the years, my 30 years, I've run into all types of people who are going through these things for the first time. And when I share that story with them and they said, wow, I thought I was the only one feeling like that or going through that. They said, well, how many years has it been since you went through that? And I say 25. And they say, you never went through it again? Nope, I never had a relapse because of the strategies and things that I put in this book. Have been very impactful. They are my mantras. I have a certain type of mindset. I use affirmations and visualizations. I do things to program my subconscious mind. You know, Anna, our subconscious mind controls, they say 95% of what we do unconsciously day in and day out. We're only operating on 5% of consciousness that control our day-to-day influences. So if you were raised in a family from birth to say 5 or 6, those first 5 or 6 years, our brains get conditioned by our cultural influences, our family, all those things. So if you were in a very limiting environment where you constantly heard negativity and bad things, your subconscious is like a sponge. It just absorbed all of that. And when you run on that program, that loop throughout your life, unbeknownst to you, wondering why you're sabotaging your whole life. And God forbid you go through a trauma like you Anna, that those things can be locked not only in your cognitively in your brain, they can be locked into your body on a somatic level, And that's why therapy, getting someone to really help you process that, something called somatic experiencing. If you have a trauma in your body, someone can help you work through that to get you to a place where you can be functional on a high level. So therapy is definitely critical and necessary for some people.
I think people look negatively on therapy, and that's why it's important. I want to kind of express my experience of it. And I've got to admit, I didn't want to go. I saw it as a weakness. I thought, I'm going to go into this room. There's going to be a chair. There's going to be some tissues on the table. I was all being like a little bit like an adaptive child, like a bit sulky, about it. I don't want to go. But my cousin, who had gone through a very bad experience years ago, she'd had therapy, and she was like, no, you must go. You must go. It really helped me. So it was one of the best things I had. In fact, I interviewed my therapist on this show not so long ago. And I've stayed in touch with her, and I'm actually helping her with some, because my skills is like online marketing and sales and stuff. So I'm helping her with stuff like that. But when I got her on the show, we were talking about how isn't it interesting how when someone has a personal trainer, they're like, hey, I've got a personal trainer. Or if someone has like a business coach, oh yeah, I've got this business coach going to help me raise money.
Yeah.
But when it's like maybe like a sort of mental health therapist, people shy away from telling people about it. So we were just sort of giggling about that when actually it was one of the best things that I'd done, together with other things as well, you know, that I prioritized me. I wasn't prioritizing me, and that's why I've got those 3 pillars, with this around the self-care and the mindset and things like that. And it's really why I put this podcast together, because I like you, with sharing stories can be so powerful. And I think by sharing, I've met some absolutely awesome people on this show, and just by sharing everybody's stories, it really does help people listening to them. Because I think with social media, everybody's, you know, I call Facebook fake book. Everybody's showing these perfect lives, when actually, and I had this with my son not so long ago, where he was like, I just want to be normal, you know, because he doesn't really see his dad now. And I was like, what is normal? You know, because he was naming some of his friends. And I said, behind closed doors, everybody's family has, you know, nobody's perfect. There is no normal. We have to embrace our differences. And, you know, it's just really interesting. I think by sharing our stories and helping other people, we can have real impact in this world. And I do now have people that reach out to me that have listened to the show. You know, at the beginning when I first launched it was people in my following and community and friends and family. And now people who I've never met before reach out and thank me for putting it together, because the different episodes really help them. And I really think your shares with your story and your book, I'd really kind of like, when is the book out? Because we can put all the details in the notes.
Well, my book is out now. If individuals, they want to purchase the book, my website for purchasing the book is www.feelingcrazywithdarryl, DARRYL, feelingcrazywithdarryl.com, all one word. Because my goal, Anna, is to destigmatize mental illness. As you just mentioned, when you talk about mental illness, people go, oh, don't talk about that. That's shameful, or you're weak. And what I try to do in my book is explain to people that you're not weak. Okay, you're not weak because you have a mental illness. You're not crazy as people try to make people out to be. It is a normal reaction to stress that we all are going through all over the world.
Everyone does, exactly.
We all are going through anxiety. Anxiety is a natural response to, as you mentioned earlier, feeling the uncertainty of COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. I lost family members. I lost a dear friend to COVID. So it was a very scary time. When it first happened, my wife literally, when you talk about, I thought I was going crazy. She was going crazy. She was like, what's going on? Everything is shutting down. People are dying. What are we going to do? And my daughter, who was a senior in high school, she said, Daddy, this is so terrible. I'm losing my senior year. I'm not going to be able to go to prom and graduation. This is so unfair. And I found myself having to use my therapy cap and my experience to basically ground them in a rational place where they wouldn't just go off the deep end like I used to when I was younger. And I said, guys, because one of the things I've learned through reading is that I don't care how bad things get in the world, and no matter, even in the worst of times, even during World War II, and Churchill, he kept his country together when during World War II, telling people to just have a stiff upper lip and let's get through this. And people were able to overcome things with the power of the mind. Thinking that we can overcome this, was once you let your mind go, then everything else is going to follow. So I had to keep my daughter and my wife together by telling them, let's be realistic, let's be rational. I even wrote a blog back then giving people 12 tips for how to stay sane and rational during that time. And just doing simple things. I told my wife, I said, we're going to get a vaccine. This is way before they even thought about a vaccine. But I believe whatever the mind, like there's a saying that I like, whatever the mind can believe and conceive, it can achieve. If you can believe it and conceive it, you can achieve it. And now we have the vaccine. And mainly by being there with my wife and my daughter, giving them mental strategies to stay rational, not catastrophizing, thinking, oh, the world is over. Teaching, helping them not to magnify things, making things bigger than they were, to look at the gray side versus black or white thinking. Those are some of these CBT types of strategies, and mainly myself being regulated during that time. I had to stay calm and rational because as social creatures, we feed off of each other's vibration. And if my vibration was negative and afraid, they would have been negative and even more afraid. So I gave them an image of confidence, that we assurance that we were going to get better, and things did get better. And to this day, my wife said, "I'm so glad I had you during that time because I didn't know what was going to happen." And I said, "Honey, you have to stay rational and realistic and not let our imaginations are so, our imaginations can take us in all types of crazy places." And I've learned that as someone who had a history dealing with anxiety and depression, because I'm a very imaginative person. I said, let's learn how to stay rational and realistic. More importantly, let's think in a positive way. Let's not catastrophize, because the mind, again, the thoughts of our mind, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. We can change each other individually with our thoughts, and we can change whole worlds with our thought. But you have to go into a place of quiet, of mindfulness, and you have to just cut the TV off. Don't let the news and all of the terrible things they're broadcasting 24/7 on cable TV get into your psyche and convince you. Because I've seen during September the 11th, I remember, Anna, that there was a guy who wrapped his house in plastic because he was afraid that when we got bombed during September the 11th by terrorists, he was going to die. There's no way you're going to survive a bomb, a gas bomb, with wrapping your house with saran wrap. But that just shows you how rational the brain can be, because what do we want more than anything as human beings? We want to feel safe. And if we don't feel safe, our bodies and our minds will do anything to try to protect us. And when we don't feel safe, that's when anxiety goes through the roof, because it's not good to feel uncertain and to feel unsafe.
Yeah, exactly. I've done a lot of, I don't know, EFT, like the tapping strategies. Have you ever heard of any of that?
What's it called?
EFT. I'm trying to think what it stands for now. I used to do it because I had a huge legal battle, 32 court hearings in total over a few years. And before I went in, I used to feel really anxious, I think most people do before they go to court. But a lot of it was, there was a lot of stuff around that. So it was saying positive affirmations. And there's certain points, like there's here, I think there's here, and I think there was here as well. I don't do it so much now because I don't really need it as much, but it really, really did help me, like if people want to look it up. And as you tap, you say, look, I am a good person. I have got this. You're saying positive affirmations before you went in. I used to also, because I love different oils like lavender oil and things like that. I used to have a roll of oil as well that I'd put on because I wanted to kind of breathe that in. Take a pause before I went in, and it did really help me. It really did help me, because I really understand a lot of what you're saying about being rational, because I do that with a lot of friends of mine and have done throughout this sort of pandemic, where it's been like, right, take a breath. What can you do about it? It's like you can only control the things that you've got control of. You've got, there's loads of things that we can't control. So what can you do about it, rather than panicking about things that you can't control? Worry about those things that you can kind of control, I suppose. So yeah, I'm going to go and check out your book, because I think it could be. I'm curious to go and read it, because I'm sure there's going to be. We've got some synergy here. And I'm sure there's going to be some other good stuff in there that I can really benefit from. Because I think we're always growing, aren't we? We're always learning. It's a whole journey and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, Anna, when I was going through my depression, I have books on my bookshelf that I used to go to the library, to the bookstore all the time and buy books when I was in the throes of mental illness, because I was looking for an answer. I did not want to let mental illness destroy me, and it wasn't going to define me.
Yeah.
And so I was searching for answers, and I saw a therapist then. Like I said, therapy is great. I recommend anybody that's dealing with a situation that they can't resolve independently to get the help of a therapist. As a therapist myself, I love meeting with clients and helping them to be able to step outside what they're dealing with and see what's going on, to navigate them to a place of calm and peace. But when I was younger and trying to find an answer, I did therapy, they call bibliotherapy, buying books. The research even shows that bibliotherapy, buying books like my book and reading them, have a ability to help you resolve your anxiety, your depression. And bibliotherapy helped me. So many books I've read, the more and more I was able to read books and connect the dots to what I was going through, it was a sense of freedom. I keep coming back to your word, freedom. It was such a sense of freedom for me emotionally, physically, spiritually, because each book gave me a different strategy, gave me a different insight. I read books about people back then who were going through depression and anxiety, who overcame it, and it gave me hope. And sometimes if you have someone, my first chapter in my book, I have a quote, Chinese proverb, to know the road ahead, ask those coming back. I've been there. I'm coming back from anxiety and depression. I know what's down the road for those the 20-somethings who are going through it, the 30-somethings, those people who are coming into a young adulthood, and all of a sudden all these young adulthood responsibilities they're smashing into them emotionally. So I can tell them and help them navigate that, because you and I, we've been down that.
Yeah,
you can share your domestic violence story and help a woman or even a man, because men go through domestic violence too, and you can help them.
I didn't want to share my story for so long. I felt ashamed of it.
Yeah.
You know? And then when I did start, it was when I wrote a book. Well, I wrote a chapter in a book. She Made It Happen. There's 15 of us that all had different sort of stories, that we'd overcome. And so when I wrote it in the book, I then decided, right, I'm going to share this story. But the reason I didn't want to share it was, one, I was kind of like a bit embarrassed and ashamed, and also I didn't want people to label me as this, domestic violence survivor, I suppose. I don't know what, it was just loads of things that I was going through at the time, but it was the best thing ever. And then in 2020, I was featured in Forbes magazine. So I always share that story of like how I turned my life from being, surviving and fleeing domestic violence to being featured in Forbes. And I think, initially it was really just to get it out there selfishly for me, to help me heal, to be like proud of it. And then now it's helped so many people by sharing that. Like you say, women that have gone through similar things, who are still in that cycle, who, say to themselves, I can't do this because of that. And I often share it to a lot of women, actually, by saying, look, the reason I'm sharing this is to kind of really inspire you, to make you believe that you can do anything. So it was the best thing I did to share it, but I was very scared. Got to admit, at the time I was very scared, because I was like, what repercussions, could there be something for my ex as well? There was all this stuff, but I was like, no, I have to do it. I have to do it because it's energy. I need to share it. It's part of my healing, and it's also going to help a lot of people, which it has. So yeah, I'd encourage anybody that has because everyone's got a story. We've all had challenges. Some are maybe a bit more traumatic than each other, but we've all got a story to share. And I think by sharing them, it's so powerful. It can really, really help people. So I'd encourage anybody listening to this to share their story and not be embarrassed, because nobody's perfect. We've all got, we've all had things along the way, haven't we?
Yes.
So, yeah. So we always ask everybody Well, I always ask everybody, what does freedom mean to you? And I love this question because we always get lots of different answers. So it's my nosy bit now. I love like, it's my kind of like moment of, oh yeah, I love that one. So what does freedom mean to you, Darryl?
Okay. First, before I answer that question, Anna, I just want to say you are a bright light to share your story of having gone through something so traumatic as domestic violence. I really respect you for your courage to bring that story to the public and to help other people with your story. So I just want to just honor you by saying you're a very resilient, strong person, and thank you for having the courage to do that. Now I'll go to your question. Freedom. What freedom means to me is we all, as you just said, we all have a story to share. Not only do we all have a story to share, we all have a divine purpose in life. God or the universe or whatever universal spirit or energy source that you lean on to draw on has given us all the great powers and abilities and strengths. And the freedom for me is living that purpose, finding out what that purpose is and manifesting that dream. And that's why I wrote my book. One of my purposes in life is to help people. I've been put on this planet to help people. As a social worker, people have come to me or I've sent to me at different times in my 30 years, and I've been able to help people. And I always would scratch my head and go, that wasn't an accident, that I was put here at this time and place to help this person. And for years, I was trying to write this book, and I was going through my own issues, and I was wondering why I didn't get this book done 10 years ago. It wasn't time. And then I've just got it done, but it was the timing. Not only do I have 10 more years of experience, I became a better writer. And now I have the freedom now to write in a way that where the words can connect not only with Anna, they can connect with people all over the world. And so I'm experiencing a freedom in my life that I've never felt before with the writing of this book, with having gotten to the end of my social work career. There is a certain level of confidence that comes with freedom. I believe when you're not free, you're afraid. When you're not free, you're afraid to take risks. I take risks. I do it with the confidence that universal law and the law of attraction is going to return everything to me tenfold. And this has manifested its way in my life in so many ways. I've seen when I am free of thought, free of anxiety. When I say anxiety, I don't mean all anxiety, because anxiety, we all feel some of that. That's normal. I'm talking about the pervasive, serious, the anxiety disorders. Now that I'm free of that and free of depression, my mind is just opened up in so many ways about all the possibilities of all the things that I'm manifesting in my life. And right now, there's no accident. You and I are talking.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a universal connection. You and I are supposed to connect at this time to reach the people who will listen to this podcast. Whether this podcast changed one life or it changed 100 lives, then one life matters. And so to answer your question, freedom for me is being authentically who you are, expressing who you are, having not, even if you have a fear, which I do still have fears, it's normal, having the freedom of courage. I love that. The freedom of courage to push through your fear and go forward and achieve the things you want to achieve. To me, that's true freedom. When you are free. I spoke to 100 police cadets about a month ago, and I was living my purpose. I was on stage, and I've never felt so free in my life, sharing like I'm doing there, sharing my story. And in that moment, I felt free. It's almost like during the COVID, my youngest daughter, who was so stressed out, we live in a rural area here in the DC area, out in the countryside where there's lots of farmland and cows and birds and things. And we were driving right when COVID first started, when they were showing all these people dying and my daughter was panicking. And we were driving through this little hillside and you could see the barn. It was a sunny day and she was sad. And she looked up in the sky and she said, "Daddy, I wish I could be a bird." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because they're so free." She said, look at it. It just has no words. It's just flying around. So I felt like a bird that day on the stage. I feel like a bird right now. I am free. And there are things going on around me all the time, bad stuff. But in the midst of the storm, as long as I'm on purpose and living my life with confidence and even pushing through my fears, that's the best freedom I could feel.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true, because it's about, there's a quote that I read a few years ago about how happiness is what you think, what you say, and what you do are all in harmony. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And because there was one moment in time where I was like, you know, thinking this stuff, but not saying anything and definitely not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And I think also, even just when you're running a business, you know, you've got ideas and it's implementation that actually makes it happen. So everyone can always relate to that, because there's a lot of people don't, like you say, live in their authentic self, or they hide behind what society thinks they should be, or, you know, so I like the free as a bird thing as well.
Yeah. Let me give you this metaphor. In my book, I talk about the landfill of dreams, and the landfill of dreams. And what is that? Back in my earlier career, before I became a social worker, I had a nonprofit organization helping at-risk kids. And one time it was called Youth Entrepreneurial Services. I was teaching them how to become young entrepreneurs. And I started at a time when Washington, D.C. was the murder capital of the nation. Young Black boys were dying in record numbers, getting lured into selling drugs. And so I wanted an alternative for them. I wanted them to learn how to make money legally and positively by being supported by positive mentors. And one day we went to a landfill. We had a job hauling trash for someone. And we went into this landfill into the suburbs of the DC area. And I saw all these huge trucks just dumping all types of people's debris, TVs that looked like they were never used before, couches. And I was like, all this stuff that was never used. And as I sit there waiting to unload my truck, I thought about people's dreams, not living their authentic self. I said, how many people die in their dreams going to the landfill of dreams? Like, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a public speaker. I wanted to be an author. But because they were so afraid, they let their dreams go into the landfill of dreams, this imaginary place where all the never used dreams, like the landfill, get covered up and forgotten about. And so my purpose of my book was just inspire people. Don't let your dreams go into the landfill of dreams. Don't let your dreams go into the landfill of dreams. Manifest your destiny. Don't let mental health, stress, anxiety, depression, all these things stop you from manifesting your dreams. Don't let your dreams go into the landfill of dreams. Everyone has something special in them. And I'm going to live my dream. I'm going to manifest it, and I'm doing it now. And I thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you ever so much for coming on the show. It's been great to connect with you. Let's stay in touch. We'll put the link. Was it Feeling Crazy with Darryl? www.feelingcrazywithdarryl.com. I remember that.
Yeah.
So we'll put that in the show notes. So everybody that's listening to this on iTunes will be able to see that in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the comments. I'm going to go and check out Darryl's book, and I think it's kind of like it's got a whole. It's like I'm curious to what's inside it now. It's like there's loads of resources in there, lots of stories that can be like a toolbox to help anybody that's going through a worrying or stressful time, and where you think you're going crazy, because I can definitely relate to that. So brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Darryl, for coming on the show. And let's keep in touch. There might be other things that we can do together. So great to have you.
I certainly will. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you want to get more freedom in your life, then come and join Your Freedom Project Facebook group, which the link is below in the comments section. And I am giving you a copy of my visualization manifesting book. So manifest more freedom in your life and live the life of your dreams.
Hey, Thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.